G'day, my name's Brian from BsianTech. We're going to look into this Acer Travelmate Spin P4. It's a 14-inch convertible business laptop. What that means is this computer can flip its screen around and then you can then pull out its stylus and then take some notes on the display and it converts to a tablet. Pretty cool, isn't it? All right, let's get on. We're going to have a look at its features of this computer as well as the temperatures and fan noise of this computer. And I will also do the line jitter test on this computer later in the video. We'll also look at the internals as well. Now, we'll be putting timestamps along this video so you can skip to a different section that you may be interested in just to save you time. Now, first off, let's see what this computer can be configured with. With the processor, it is using an 11th gen Intel core and it can be either configured with an i5 or an i7. As for RAM wise, it has a maximum capacity of 32 gigs. That's using 2 SODIMM slots, so you can upgrade it later on. As for the storage, it has one slot of M.2 for SSD, and of course it has Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.1. As for graphics, it is using the Intel integrated graphics, which is the Intel RSXe, and for my testing, that's pretty decent. As for the display, it is a full HD display and has a rating of 300 nit of brightness. It is a glossy type of screen and that's kind of expected when you involve a stylus. So that's not unusual there. In direct sunlight, you're going to struggle quite a bit on this glossy display as you get a lot of reflection and the colors is a bit washed out. Now, if they had a lot more high in brightness, we can then overcome that. But with the glossy display, that is a lot more prevalent than your matte display. With reading text in direct sunlight, that's not too bad, but again, you do get quite a lot of reflections. In the shade, you can still read text quite happy and also do your multimedia. But again, you do have quite a bit of reflections when you're outdoors due to the glossy display. Having a look at the light leaks on the backlight, I didn't find there was too much, so that was doing pretty well. Now having a look at the bezel of the display, it isn't that much on either side, but there is quite a bit of black area, is what I will call, from the top and also on the bottom. Now this is not unusual for most convertible computers because when you put this computer into tablet mode, you will more than likely over grab the edges and you don't really want to engage in the palm rejections. Again, all the same on the other side. Measuring the color gamut coverage of the full HD 300 nit display, it resulted with 57.2% sRGB coverage, 40.5% Adobe RGB coverage, and 41.6% DCI P3 coverage. There is a 1080p webcam located above the display. Yes, it's good to see they've got a 1080p webcam, and it also has a webcam shield, which is just a matter of moving the lever above the webcam to the left, and you'll see a physical shutter that goes over the lens, and you'll see the lever will also have a little red indicator just to indicate that there's a physical shutter that's over the lens, so even if it accidentally turned on, at least there's something blocking the view of the lens. So you don't need the electrical tape or blue tack anymore. This is a recording from the 1080p webcam from the Travelmate Spin P4. This is the video and audio unedited so you can hear and see what the quality of the webcam and microphone is like. As always, I've got 2 types of lights currently turned on. I've got my one shield light turned on and also the down lights in this room turned on. So I'm going to turn off my one shield light off and see this camera adjust. Now I've got 2 down lights in front of me, which is a bit far away, so I don't have much light hitting on my face. So this is what I would consider a dark environment. Now if you're in an office environment, you should get way more light than what I'm currently in. And of course I'm going to turn my one shield light back on. And of course, better quality of light gives you better quality of picture. Now, I'm also in quite a noisy environment. It's raining outside. I've got my computers running some tests as well, which are producing quite a bit of loud ambient noise. It's about 51 to 52 decibels, right? So this is also a test of the noise reduction in the microphone. So definitely put a comment below. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this webcam and microphone. Let's have a little port. Starting on the left hand side of the computer, there is an AC power port. RJ45 Ethernet, which is on a lever system, full-size HDMI port, which is version 2.0, two USB 3.2 Gen 2 ports, Thunderbolt 4 port, which also supports charging as well, so you can charge the laptop using this port. No ports at the back besides the exhaust vent. Looking on the right hand side of the computer, Acer active stylus, power button, micro SD card slot, headphone jack, and the Kensington security lock slot. There are two speakers located above the keyboard, and you do see the speaker grill run along the top of the keyboard. Now, when I tested out the maximum volume of the speakers, it managed to measure in a peak of 81.4 decibels, which is decently loud. And if you're taking this computer to a presentation, if you're in laptop mode, that's not too bad if you're at a cafe or in a bit of a noisy environment. But if you are in tent mode or in tablet mode, because they are above the keyboard, it actually faces to back from the user. And I did find it struggling a bit because of the fact that it was going away from the user. So if you're doing presentation in a noisy environment, do leave it in your laptop mode. As for sound quality of the speakers, there is some bass, but they're not deep bass. I did find the mids and highs quite balanced and had quite good clarity as well. As again, with the acoustics, if you're in laptop mode, it's pretty much 360 degrees, but if you're in tablet mode, it is backfiring. So that's why I found it struggling a little bit. This is the audio recording of the speakers from the Travelmate Spin P4 at 100% volume.
Pray like stars in the darkest night, crystallize fascinate. If you wanna stay alive, if you don't wanna be her prey, don't stand in her way. Run, run, run away. Crystallize, 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 watching her prey. Crystallize, 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 fascinate.
The Travelmate Spin P4 does come with a 56 watt hour battery. It also comes with a 65 watt power adapter, which is relatively what I would call medium small. And you can also charge the Travelmate Spin P4 via the USB-C port, as most docks and adapters should be able to provide 65 watt of power. And I did perform the battery life test on this particular Travelmate Spin P4. And I tested my 5 different modes as usual. So in best performance, it managed to get an hour and 50 minutes. And in better performance mode, it managed to get 2 hours. And in better battery life mode, it managed to get 5 hours. And in battery save mode, it managed to get 7 hours and 30 minutes. And in my media mode, it managed to get 8 hours and 30 minutes. So that's not too bad for the battery life. Now, I do want to give you a bit of a disclaimer. As always with my battery life tests, I do put a consistent workload across all the system resources. Now, normally you should get better battery life than that because most applications usually only hit the resources pretty much in burst speed and not so consistently. So I'm just trying to give you the worst case scenario. The weight of the Travelmate Spin P4 is 1.56 kilos plus the 65 watt power adapter becomes a total combined weight of 1.88 kilos that you might be carrying around with you. As for the temperatures and fan noise of the Travelmate Spin P4, when I took my measurements, my ambient temperature was 23 degrees Celsius and my ambient room noise was 38 decibels. Now, before I read out the numbers, I just want to give you a bit of background. Your average hand is anywhere between 33 to 34 degrees Celsius. So hopefully that gives you a bit of reference points to see how hot or how cool this computer could be. So I took my base measurement when the computer was on idle, and the hottest area on the keyboard measured in at 30 degrees Celsius. As for the fan noise, it was still at 38 decibels, so that's practically quiet. And the core temperature was 41 degrees Celsius. Then I put the computer on 20% load, so that's pretty much average use. So that's tasks like office productivity work, streaming video, surfing the web, and the hottest area on the keyboard measured in at 32 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, stayed at 38 decibels, so that's practically quiet still, and the internal core temperature averaged at 51 degrees Celsius. Then I put the computer on 50% load, and the hottest area on the keyboard measured in at 34 degrees Celsius. As for fan noise, still stayed at 38 decibels, and the average internal core temperature was 53 degrees Celsius. Then I put the computer on 100% load, and the hottest area on the keyboard measured in at 36 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, it measured in at 40 decibels. And as for the internal core temperature, it averaged at 68 degrees Celsius. I also measured the bottom back cover when it's in laptop mode, and the hottest area on the back cover measured in at 49 degrees Celsius. And of course, the fan noise stayed at 40 decibels. I also measure the computer when it's in tablet mode with 20% load, so that's hopefully average use for a tablet mode. And the hottest area on the keyboard side measured in at 33 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, stayed at 38 decibels. As for internal core temperature, it averaged at 51 degrees Celsius. As for the display side in tablet mode, the hottest area measured in a maximum of 36 degrees Celsius. And of course, fan noise stayed at 38 decibels. Looking at results of the measurements, the Travelmate Spin P4 is very cool temperature-wise and also very quiet, even at 100% load. I think the Travelmate Spin P4 is probably the coolest and quietest with active cooling that's come across this channel. That's a bit of a surprise for me. Let's have a look at the stability performance of the processor in the Travelmate Spin P4. This particular Spin P4 is configured with an i5-1135G7, and looking on the Intel website, has a maximum turbo boost of 4.2 GHz for this processor, and has a base clock speed of 2.4 GHz at 28 watt TDP, and go all the way down to 900 MHz at 12 watt TDP. It's feeling hot, or it's trying to save power. But ideally, we want to see the processor performance at about 2.4 GHz and above. Now, I've got this computer connected to mains power and set to best performance, and I have this computer running on 100% load for just about 2.5 hours. So that's the processor, RAM, and hard drive at 100% load. And I can see the processor is anywhere between 2.5 to about 2.8 gigahertz. So it averages around about 2.6 gigahertz is what I would say that would be safely at. And that is above the 2.4 gigahertz. So that we don't have thermal throttling. We do have a bit of turbo throttling, but that's not too bad. Now we examine the single core behavior of the processor in the Travelmate Spin P4. I still have this computer connected to mains power and set to best performance. And I'm going to start off a Citybench single core task. And we'll start the stopwatch and we'll have a look at the behavior of the processor. At the moment, we can see that we've got all the way up to about 4 gigahertz, which is nearing the maximum turbo boost of 4.2 gigahertz from what we see from the Intel website. And it looks like it's staying pretty steadily around about 4 gigahertz. Now, we'll very soon be passing the 30-second mark, and we are still at 4 gigahertz. We just passed the 8-minute mark, and the processor performance is still pretty stable at 4 gigahertz. And I don't really hear much of the fan noise, and putting my hand over the keyboard, I don't feel too much heat at all. I would probably say it's only around about 35 to about 36 degrees Celsius, more closer to 35 degrees Celsius. The Travelmate Spin P4 does come with a digital stylus, which is the Acer Active Pen. And when this pen is garaged or parked into its home inside the Travelmate Spin P4, it does recharge the batteries, as you can see from the contact point here. at the back. There is also one button which you can configure in Windows for other functions. Now I'm going to do the line jitter test. Now please remember I am not a digital artist, so I'll do my best to do some slow diagonal lines. And I will very slowly bring in the ruler. And I've only got one hand on the display. So it's doing pretty good with the palm rejection. And I'm going to put another hand on the display while I'm going to do on this ruler. You can see that's doing pretty good with palm rejection here. And I'll do some quick lines here. And some horizontal lines. Some slower ones. That's not too bad. I'm going to do some spirals. I do have my hand on the display. I am touching the display with my hand at the moment while I'm doing the spirals. And I find also the parallax is not that much. It's actually quite responsive, as you can see. The pen is pressure sensitive, so I am just going to do some very thick lines. Now this is light, and I'm pressing into the display. And then light again, and then hard again. As you can see from this line here, it doesn't look like to be picking up the light touches as much as I would like it to. So I like to see an improvement on the pressure sensitivity on the tip here to be more registered on the display. And I'll just do some writing. Because the screen is so responsive, I find it quite natural to write on this display. Bring our focus on the keyboard. I find that the keyboard on the Travelmate Spin P4 is quite standard. I don't find any misplaced or funky keys. And as for each individual keys, I find that it has a very nice smooth texture to each individual key and has a quite nice tactile feel. It's actually quite a hard and fast bounce back up. Now the travel is quite nice as well too for the key travel, and also the distance between each keys, the spacing is quite standard. So nothing new, that one there. And it does have backlight, and it's just matter to engage the backlight is function F8, and there are two settings, off and on. Looking at the trackpad, it is a nice decent size, not overly large and not too small. It's actually a good size. So even as you're typing, you find that you're not really engaging in the palm rejection too much, as the sizing is quite decent. Now as for the texture of the trackpad, it is silky smooth. And even if you have moist fingers, it can still register your touch. Now it is mechanical, so it is hinged at the top and you can depress it at the bottom. Let's have a look at the internals of the Travelmate Spin P4. We just need to remove the back cover first, and that is held in by 12 Phillips head screws. That's good. That's a common screwdriver you should be able to find. And then you just need to pry it open. Now my advice is to start from the hinge and then go from the back of here and then along from the hinge to the sides, and then repeat on the other side. Now I'll pry this one open to speed up time so we can see what is underneath. And pretty much we'll start on the right hand of the side of the battery. We've got the M.2 slot, so that's the SSD. And after that, above there is the two slots of SODIMM slots for your RAM. We've got the processor lives underneath here. We've got the Wi-Fi module right here. And then we've got the battery. Now the battery is held, connector is just here. And we can see that the CMOS battery lives right underneath the M.2 SSD. And it is connected to this connector here if you need to reset the CMOS battery. And that's pretty much all there is to it. I did perform the benchmarks for this Acer Travelmate Spin P4. This one's configured with an i5 1135G7 with 8 gigs of RAM and 250 gig SSD. So I'll put up the results for Passmark, Citybench R23, PC Mark, 3D Mark, Crystal Disk Mark, Blender, Pugin Lightroom, Pugin Premiere Pro, Eugene Engine, and Spec View Prep. and some gaming benchmarks like Far Cry New Dawn, Immortal Phoenix Rising. Overall, with the Acer Travelmate Spin P4, I do really like its temperatures and fan noise. It is one of the coolest and quietest active cool computer that's been on this channel. I also like its garage pen. It's nice to have a garage pen when you can want to take some notes. It's ready to go in there, and also you have less chance of misplacing that stylus because it now has a home to go to if you're not in use. It also has very good palm rejection when it's in tablet mode, and also has good pen support. I also like the port selections on this Travelmate Spin P4, especially the RJ45 Ethernet port. Now this is a port that I find very useful, and we're starting to see less of the RJ45 in a lot of the business computers. So that's starting to die out, but I like seeing that this is still kept in. Thank you very much for that, Acer. Try and keep that in because that's very useful and very important in a lot of businesses still. Now, what I like to see improvements is I like to see a more brighter display, or options for a more brighter display than 300 nits, because with the glossy screen when you're outdoors, it is struggling quite a bit because of the reflections. So it'll be nice to have a more brighter display that we can choose from. Now, the other thing I like to see improve is maybe a different placement for the speakers. Because this is a 2-in-1, when this is in tablet mode, I find it quite quiet because of the fact that the speakers are firing the audio away from the user. So it'd be nice to actually see a better placement for, or make it just more louder. Overall, I still can recommend the Acer Travelmate Spin P4. Now, I hope you found this video informative or enjoyed it. If you did, even to support my channel, smack that like button for me. It does help me out. And if you haven't done already, subscribe to my channel. Again, subscribe to my channel by hitting the right screen. I do try to upload a new video every week. And I also have membership as well if you want to support me even further by clicking that join button. And as always, imperfections in life makes it beautiful and interesting. And I'll see you next video.